And this country will only be able to stop the war in Vietnam when the young men who are made to fight it begin to say, hell no, we ain't going. Now then, as a failure, because the peace movement has been unable to get off the college campuses where everybody has a 2S and not going to get drafted anyway. And the question is, how can you move out of that into the white ghettos of this country and begin to articulate a position for those white students who do not want to go? We cannot do that. It is something sometimes ironic that many of the peace groups have beginning to call us violent and say they can no longer support us, and we are in fact the most militant organization, peace or civil rights or human rights, against the war in Vietnam in this country today. There isn't one organization that has begun to meet our stance on the war in Vietnam. Because we not only say we are against the war in Vietnam, we are against the draft. We are against the draft. No man has the right to take a man for 2 years and train him to be a killer. A man should decide what he wants to do with his life. So the question then is, it becomes crystal clear for black people, because we can easily say that anyone fighting in the war in Vietnam is nothing but a black mercenary, and that's all he is. Anytime a black man leaves a country where he can't vote to supposedly deliver the vote for somebody else, he's a black mercenary. Anytime a black man leaves this country, gets shot in Vietnam on foreign ground, and returns home and you won't give him a burial in his own homeland, he's a black mercenary. The black mercenary. And that even if I were to believe the lies of Johnson, if I were to believe his lies that we're fighting to give democracy to the people in Vietnam, as a black man living in this country, I wouldn't fight to give this to anybody. I wouldn't give it to anybody. So that we have to use our bodies and our minds in the only way that we see fit. We must begin, like the philosopher Camus, to come alive by saying no. That is the only act in which we begin to come alive. And we have to say no to many, many things in this country. This country is a nation of thieves. It has stole everything it has, beginning with black people. Beginning with black people. And that the question is, how can we move to start changing this country from what it is, a nation of thieves? This country cannot justify any longer its existence. We have become the policemen of the world. The Marines are at our disposal to always bring democracy. And if the Vietnamese don't want democracy, well, damn it, we'll just wipe them the hell out, because they don't deserve to live if they won't have our way of life. There is then, in a larger sense, what do you do on your university campus? Do you raise questions about the 100 black students who were kicked off campus a couple of weeks ago? 800? 800? And how does that question begin to move? Do you begin to relate people outside of the ivory tower on a university wall? Do you think you're capable of building those human relationships as the country now stands? You're fooling yourself. It is impossible for white and black people to talk about building a relationship based on humanity when the country is the way it is, when the institutions are clearly against us. We've taken all the myths of this country and we found them to be nothing but downright lies. This country told us that if we work hard, we would succeed. And if that were true, we would own this country lock, stock, and barrel. Lock, stock, and barrel. Lock, stock, and barrel. It is we who have picked the cotton for nothing. It is we who are the maids in the kitchens of liberal white people. It is we who are the janitors, the porters, the elevator men. It is we who sweep up your college floors. Yes, it is we who are the hardest workers and the lowest paid. And the lowest paid. and that it is nonsensical for people to start talking about human relationships until they're willing to build new institutions. Black people are economically insecure. White liberals are economically secure. Can you begin to build an economic coalition? Are the liberals willing to share their salaries with the economically insecure black people they so much love? Then if you're not, are you willing to start building new institutions that will provide economic security for black people? That's the question we want to deal with. That's the question we want to deal with. We have to seriously examine the histories that we have been told, but we have something more to do than that. American students are perhaps the most politically unsophisticated students in the world. In the world. In the world. Across every country in this world, while we were growing up, students were leading the major revolutions of their countries. We have not been able to do that. They have been politically aware of their existence. In South America, our neighbors down below the border have one every 24 hours just to remind us that they're politically aware. And that we have been unable to grasp it because we've always moved in the field of morality and love while people have been politically jiving with our lives. And the question is, how do we now move politically and stop trying to move morally? You can't move morally against a man like Brown and Reagan. You got to move politically to cut them out of business. You got to move politically. You can't move morally against Lyndon Baines Johnson because he is an immoral man. He doesn't know what it's all about. So you've got to move politically. You've got to move politically. And that we have to begin to develop a political sophistication, which is not to be a parrot. The two-party system is the best party in the world. Okay? There is a difference between being a parrot and being politically sophisticated. We have to raise questions about whether or not we do need new types of political institutions in this country, and we instinct maintain that we need them now. We need new political institutions in this country. And anytime Lyndon Baines Johnson can head a party which has in it Bobby Kennedy, Wayne Morse, Eastland, Wallace, and all those others supposed to be liberal cats, there's something wrong with that party. They're moving politically, not morally. And that if that party refuses to seat black people from Mississippi and goes ahead and seats racists like Eastland and his clique, it is clear to me that they're moving politically and that one cannot begin to talk morality to people like that. We must begin to think politically and see if we can have the power to impose and keep the moral values that we hold high. We must question the values of this society. And I maintain that black people are the best people to do that because we have been excluded from that society. And the question is, we ought to think whether or not we want to become a part of that society. That's what we want to do. And that is precisely what it seems to me that the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee is doing. We are raising questions about this country. I do not want to be a part of the American pie. The American pie means raping South Africa, beating Vietnam, beating South America, raping the Philippines, raping every country you've been in. I don't want any of your blood money. I don't want it. Don't want to be part of that system. And the question is, how do we raise those questions? How do we raise them as activists? How do we begin to raise them? We have grown up and we are the generation that has found this country to be a world power, that has found this country to be the wealthiest country in the world. We must question how she got her wealth. That's what we're questioning. And whether or not we want this country to continue being the wealthiest country in the world at the price of raping everybody else across the world. That's what we must begin to question. And that because black people are saying we do not now want to become a part of you, we are called reverse racist. Ain't that a gas? Now then, we want to touch on nonviolence because we see that again as the failure of white society to make nonviolence work. I was always surprised at Quakers who came to Alabama and counseled me to be nonviolent, but didn't have the guts to start talking to James Clark to be nonviolent. That is where nonviolence needs to be preached, to Jim Clark, not to black people. They have already been nonviolent too many years. The question is, can white people conduct their nonviolent schools in Cicero, where they belong to be conducted, not among black people in Mississippi? Can they conduct it among the white people in Grenada, 6'2" men who kick little black children? Can you conduct nonviolent schools there? That is the question that we must raise, not that you conduct nonviolence among black people. Can you name me one black man today who's killed anybody white and is still alive? Even after a rebellion, when some black brothers throw some bricks and bottles, 10,000 of has to pay the crime. Because when the white policeman comes in, anybody who's black is arrested because we all look alike. So that we have to raise those questions. We, the youth of this country, must begin to raise those questions. And we must begin to move to build new institutions that's going to speak to the needs of people who need it. We are going to have to speak to change the foreign policy of this country. One of the problems with the peace movement is that it's just too caught up in Vietnam. And that if we pull out the troops from Vietnam this week, next week, we'd have to get another peace movement for Santo Domingo. And the question is, how do you begin to articulate needs to change the foreign policy of this country? A policy that is decided upon rape, a policy in which decisions are made upon getting economic wealth at any price. At any price. Now we articulate that we therefore have to hook up with black people around the world, and that hookup is not only psychological but becomes very real. If South America today were to rebel and black people were to shoot the hell out of all the white people there, as they should, then Standard Oil would crumble tomorrow. If South Africa were to go today, Chase Manhattan Bank would crumble tomorrow. If Zimbabwe, which is called Rhodesia by white people, were to go tomorrow, General Electric would cave in on the East Coast. The question is, how do we stop those institutions that are so willing to fight against communist aggression but closes their eye to racist oppression? That is the question that you raise. Can this country do that? Now, many people talk about pulling out of Vietnam. What will happen? If we pull out of Vietnam, there will be one less aggressor in there. We won't be there. We won't be there. And so the question is, how do we articulate those positions? And we cannot begin to articulate them from the same assumptions that the people in the country speak, because they speak from different assumptions than I assume what the youth in this country are talking about. That we're not talking about a policy or aid or sending Peace Corps people in to teach people how to read and write and build houses while we steal their raw materials from them. Is that what we're talking about? Because that's all we do. What underdeveloped countries needs information on how to become industrialized so they can keep their raw materials where they have it, produce them, and sell it to this country for the price it's supposed to pay. Not that we produce it and sell it back to them for a profit and keep sending our modern-day missionaries in, calling them the sons of Kennedy. And that if the youth are going to participate in that program, how do you raise those questions where you begin to control that Peace Corps program? How do you begin to raise them? How do we raise the questions of poverty? The assumption for this country is that if someone is poor, they are poor because of their own individual blight. Or they weren't born on the right side of town. They had too many children. They went in the army too early. Their father was a drunk. They didn't care about school. They made a mistake. That's a lot of nonsense. Poverty is well calculated in this country. It is well calculated. And the reason why the poverty program won't work is because the calculators of poverty are administering it. That's why it won't work. So how can we, as the youth in the country, move to start tearing those things down? We must move into the white community. We are in the black community. We have developed a movement in the black community. The challenge is that the white activist has failed miserably to develop the movement inside of his community. And the question is, can we find white people who are going to have the courage to go into white communities and start organizing them? Can we find them? Are they here? And are they willing to do that? Those are the questions that we must raise for the white activists. And we're never going to get caught up in questions about power. This country knows what power is. It knows it very well. And it knows what black power is because it's deprived black people of it for 400 years. So it knows what black power is. But the question of why do white people in this country associate black power with violence? And the question is because of their own inability to deal with blackness. If we had said Negro power, nobody would get scared. Everybody would support it. If we said power for colored people, everybody would be for that. But it is the word black. It is the word black that bothers people in this country, and that's their problem, not mine. Their problem. Their problem. Now, there's one modern day lie that we want to attack and then move on very quickly, and that is the lie that says anything all black is bad. Now, you're all college university proud. You've taken your basic logic course. You know about a major premise, minor premise. So people have been telling me anything all black is bad. Let's make that our major premise. Major premise. Anything all black is bad. Minor premise or particular premise. I am all black. Therefore. I'm never going to be putting that trick back. I am all black and I'm all good. Anything all black is not necessarily bad. Anything all black is only bad when you use force to keep whites out. Now that's what white people have done in this country, and they're projecting their same fears and guilt on us, and we won't have it. We won't have it. Let them handle their own fears and their own guilt. Let them find their own psychologists. We refuse to be the therapy for white society any longer. We have gone mad trying to do it. We have gone starved, raving mad trying to do it. I look at Dr. King on television every single day, and I say to myself, now there is a man who is desperately needed in this country. There is a man full of love. There is a man full of mercy. There is a man full of compassion. But every time I see Lyndon on television, I said, Martin, baby, you got a long way to go. So that the question stands as to what we are willing to do, how we are willing to say no, to withdraw from that system, and begin within our community to start to function and to build new institutions that will speak to our needs. In Lowndes County, we developed something called the Lowndes County Freedom Organization. It is a political party. The Alabama law says that if you have a party, you must have an emblem. We chose for the emblem a black panther, a beautiful black animal, which symbolizes the strength and dignity of black people. An animal that never strikes back until he's back so far into the war, he's got nothing to do but spring out. Yeah. And when he springs, he does not stop. Now, there is a party in Alabama called the Alabama Democratic Party. It is all white. It has as its emblem a white rooster and the words white supremacy for the right. Now, the gentlemen of the press, because they're advertisers, and because most of them are white, and because they're produced by that white institution, never calls the Lowndes County Freedom Organization by its name. but rather they call it the Black Panther Party. Our question is, why don't they call the Alabama Democratic Party the White Cock Party? It's clever. It is clear to me that that just points out America's problem with sex and color. Not our problem. Not our problem. And it is how white America is going to deal with those problems of sex and color. If we were to be real and to be honest, we would have to admit that most people in this country see things black and white. We have to do that. All of us do. We live in a country that's geared that way. White people would have to admit that they are afraid to go into a black ghetto at night. They are afraid. That's a fact. They're afraid because they be beat up, lynched, looted, cut up, etc., etc. That happens to black people inside the ghetto every day, incidentally. And white people are afraid of that. So you get a man to do it for you, a policeman. And now you figure his mentality where he's afraid of black people. The first time a black man jumps, that white man gonna shoot him. He's gonna shoot him. So police brutality is going to exist on that level because of the incapability of that white man to see black people come together and to live in the conditions. This country is too hypocritical, and that we cannot adjust ourselves to its hypocrisy. The only time I hear people talk about nonviolence is when black people move to defend themselves against white people. Black people cut themselves every night in the ghetto. Don't anybody talk about nonviolence. Lyndon Baines Johnson is busy bombing the hell out of Vietnam. Don't nobody talk about nonviolence. White people beat up black people every day. Don't nobody talk about nonviolence. But as soon as black people start to move, the double standard comes into being. You can't defend yourself. That's what you're saying. Because you show me a man who would advocate aggressive violence that would be able to live in this country. Show him to me. The double standards again come into itself. Is it ludicrous, hypocritical for the political chameleon who calls himself a vice president in this country? To stand up before this country and say looting never got anybody anywhere? Isn't it hypocritical for Lyndon to talk about looting, that you can't accomplish anything by looting and you must accomplish it by the legal ways? What does he know about legality? Ask Ho Chi Minh, he'll tell you. So that in conclusion, we want to say that number one, it is clear to me that we have to wage a psychological battle on the right for black people to define their own terms, define themselves as they see fit, and organize themselves as they see it. Now the question is, how is the white community going to begin to allow for that organizing? Because once they start to do that, they will also allow for the organizing that they want to do inside their community. It doesn't make a difference, because we're going to organize our way anyway. We're going to do it. The question is how we're going to facilitate those matters. Whether or not it's going to be done with 1,000 policemen with submachine guns, or whether or not it's going to be done in a context where it is allowed to be done by white people warding off those policemen. That is the question. And the question is, how are white people who call themselves activists ready to move into the white communities on two counts, on building new political institutions to destroy the old ones that we have, and to move around a concept of white youth refusing to go into the army, so that we can start then to build a new world. It is ironic to talk about civilization in this country. This country is uncivilized. It needs to be civilized. It needs to be civilized. And that we must begin to raise those questions of civilization, what it is, and who do it. And so we must urge you to fight now to be the leaders of today, not tomorrow. We've got to be the leaders of today. This country is a nation of thieves. It stands on the brink of becoming a nation of murderers. We must stop it. We must stop it. We must stop it. We must stop it. And then, therefore, in a larger sense, is the question of black people. We are on the move for our liberation. We have been tired of trying to prove things to white people. We are tired of trying to explain to white people that we're not going to hurt them. We are concerned with getting the things we want, the things that we have to be able to function. The question is, can white people allow for that in this country? The question is, will white people overcome their racism and allow for that to happen in this country? If that does not happen, brothers and sisters, we have no choice but to say very clearly, move over or we gonna move on over you. Thank you.